Alright guys, so we finally got to see the panel from Hell 2 yesterday, and we got a lot of smaller updates with one big one. That's right, we've got a new class coming in patch 4, and it's one I was really looking forward to. The Druid. It was actually really funny the way they announced it too. I'm watching the stream and they just keep having this cow in the other window, and I'm thinking, why the heck is there a cow? And the whole time Sven is doing his thing, they keep returning to this cow eating hay, and people keep trying to get it to stand still, or they'll come out and pet it, give it more hay. I'm completely confused. Why the cow? Finally, they show us it's used as the Druid introduction as the cow turns into Nick, who's dressed in full nature-loving garb. It makes you wonder what kind of skills a cow form might have. Maybe Uttershot? Hoof Stomp? But I don't know if that's in the cards just yet, at least not for this round of early access. There will, however, be 7 forms or wild shapes. First, there will be the Giant Badger. This guy will be able to tunnel underground, bypassing any kind of terrain, even traveling under locked doors. The Spider, which will be able to jump, climb, and shoot webs. Also of note is that other spiders won't attack you. There will be a dire raven, capable of flying great distances and easily escaping battle. The deep Roth is like an ox capable of charging enemies. A cat form that will be able to sneak, jump, and meow at enemies to distract them. I don't really know if I see the point to that, but whatever, it might be useful. They showed the bear and the wolf as well, but not as many of their skills. I'm guessing they'll be pretty straightforward. One thing they showed us on the preview trailer at the end of the stream was the Druid turning into an intellect devourer. Now that goes past the 7 wild shapes they said the Druid would have, but it really makes me wonder. I mean, they showed it, so we know it's possible. Maybe you can acquire it at the beginning of the game by doing something with us. Maybe you'll need to unlock more Illithid abilities before being able to learn that specific wild shape. It's really interesting to consider how that will come into play. They also talked about wanting to bring a dinosaur form in, but ultimately decided not to. This made me really sad because I would have loved to turn into any kind of a dinosaur, but I understand feature creep and I want to see the game release one day. That said, you're probably wondering about the available specializations that the Druid will have. There will be 2 to start. I'm not sure if they will add more later on or if this is all they have planned, but so far at least we know we'll be getting the Circle of Land and the Circle of the Moon. The Circle of Land will have a big focus on spellcasting, while Circle of the Moon will be all about transforming, with an added change that will allow you to dismiss a wild shape and use your bonus action to change into a new one on the same turn. There are many other circles in 5e, including the Circle of Dreams, the Shepherd, Spores, Wildfire, and the Stars. So it would be interesting to see how far they're willing to go to add more of them into the game, and specializations in general for all of the classes. Or if they're just trying to get a couple in there for testing, or is that going to be the end goal? It really makes a lot of sense that they would add more specializations, especially for Warlock, considering Will is very obviously supposed to be a Hexblade. I mean, he calls himself the Blade of the Frontiers, and he's a Warlock, and he just has that piddly little rapier. I feel like they'll be adding Hexblade in later, and switching his specialization to make his whole shtick make more sense. So personally, I do think that there are more specializations planned. So let's move on to some of the known skills that were specifically showcased, like Thorn Whip, Flaming Blade, Flaming Sphere, which looks frickin' amazing, and Goodberry. It should be pretty straightforward, figuring out what spells the Druid arsenal might have just by checking what spells Druids in 5e have available. Granted, not everything is going to make it into the game, but considering so many of them have already been added in, I'd say it's safe to assume we'll see more of the same, with maybe some tailoring. Most of the 1st and 2nd level skills are already in the game, and looking at a comparison of what's available for, let's say, Wizards and what made it into the game so far, it shows that a lot of it did come forward. We know the Druid will have access to healing magic, so we'll probably see some healing word in there, as well as destructive magic. Typically, Druids have access to several elements, like lightning and water, sleet, ice, so it will be interesting to see if they stick to just the fire that they focused on for the demo, or if they'll branch out. I'm more interested in spells that feel iconically Druid to me, like Moonbeam or Barkskin, that aren't in the game at all right now. Druids will also be able to speak with animals. They showed Sven turning into a bear and speaking with another bear at the Druid's Grove, saying quite plainly that you will be able to speak to other animals by simply changing into that animal. But they should have a first level spell available to speak with animals as well, like the ranger does. Now, I know everyone was hoping for some more story content, but from what I heard, it doesn't sound like we're going to get much in terms of main story content, even though that doesn't mean that we won't get anything new for sure, as they did say they added a lot of new cinematics. I'm hoping this means we'll get our romance scenes back with added bonuses, if you know what I mean. One cool thing they mentioned is that they apparently put in more corpses you can talk to with Speak with the Dead, and added cinematics as well for every conversation, even going as far as making the voices sound creepier and more dead. So I'll make a point to talk to more corpses on my first patch 4 playthrough. There will be more to do in the Druid's Grove as well if you're playing as a druid, and apparently there will be a whole new quest. Now, I'm not sure on the specifics because maybe I didn't hear it exactly right, but I know that there's a weapon involved that's called the Pale Oak, but it sounded like there was more to the quest than just getting a weapon, so I'm assuming there's going to be like a whole series of things that you'll do as part of a quest to get the weapon. How cool would it be if you could beat down Korga and become the new Grove leader? I know for sure there will be a bunch of new Druid-only dialogue options too, so that'll be interesting to see. Smaller changes include things like torches being made easier to use by adding a small button to your bar that you can click to light the torch instead of having to dip them into the fire. And there were more improvements made across the board, like to the UI, the cinematics, and quality of life. Now, they said that the game is still in QA, but they're expecting it to be ready by next week.
So patch 4 is currently still in QA. We had hoped it was going to be ready this week, but we found some nagging bugs that we wanted to absolutely fix before we gave it to you. So we're waiting actually for word from our QA when it's ready. We expect it's going to be next week. We don't know exactly when next week, but once we have that, we will be sure to announce it on our channels.
I expected we'd be waiting longer, and we might still be if some of the bugs they mentioned are giving them trouble to iron out, but I would be super excited to see the patch come out that early. I mean, I'm hoping it does. I think I covered most of what I wanted to go over, and I hope I summed it up well enough for those of you who were just curious about the basics. I'm so looking forward to trying out the new class, and will be checking my Steam client obsessively next week in the hopes that it actually does release that quickly. I also wanted to make a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. If any of you would like to join the family, you can click my Patreon link in the info section below. Every little bit helps, and you'll get access to more updates as well as unfiltered content. Now, here's hoping we'll all be giant honey badgers next week, not giving a fuck. See you guys later!